real fast.
Find them all the curves then. Alright,
Okay.
so thinking back over it, we've been talking about the different sections of the country in sectionalism. So, thinking about it, what would be the idea? I drew the chart on last week on Thursday and Friday. So the first major issue between north and south and west was the idea of westward improvement. Okay, so westward improvements with the idea of easy land policy, internal improvements. Alright, so was the north for it, against it, or mixed about it? I drew these diagrams for westward policy or westward expansion. Was the west for it, against it, or mixed? You have 1 in 3 chances of guessing correctly at least.
So it was the north.
Wait, what?
Okay, wait. You said it was the north.
Was the north for it,
Oh, I thought
against
I heard
it, or
west.
mixed?
I
I
thought
heard
it was
west.
still
I heard
the
Sorry.
west.
So it's westward improvements, so the idea of easy land policy, westward expansion, internal improvements, building roads. Was the north for it, against it, or mixed? Go. Chris.
Oh,
They were indeed against it.
They were, because their factory workers were leaving. So that's probably the reason why they didn't like it. Alright, the south, were they for it, against it, or mixed? Keep track of your point. Go. That was Ethan. They were mixed, because some of them liked it, and some of them did not. Alright, west, were they for the westward improvement? Go. Okay, that's Quentin. They were for it. Alright, the next major issue was with the bank. I'm gonna have to raise these up so they didn't put it in the north section. Alright, so the bank, were the north for it, against it, or mixed? That was very dramatic. Go. What's Chris?
They were for it.
They were for the bank. Alright, the south, were they for the bank, against it, or mixed? Go. That was easy.
Against.
They were against. They were. Okay, I think this is. Were they more of mixed, or were they just kind of, or were they kind of indifferent, or were they mainly for it? They were. Most of them were indifferent, but the ones that did care, they were for it. So you want to know that the South was mainly for it, where a lot of them were indifferent, or they didn't care, but the ones that did care, they were for it. And a lot of people in the South, they either didn't have an opinion about the bank, or they just wanted it. So they weren't really mixed on it in that instance. Alright, so the West, were they for the bank, against the bank, or against the bank, or were they mixed? Go. Okay, that was Chris though.
They were against it.
They were against it. They blamed it for the depression. Alright, so tariff. Were the bank, so was the North for the tariffs or against the tariffs or mixed? Go. That was Chris, was just fast.
They were against it.
They were against the tariffs?
No, they were
Just
like,
making sure.
they were in, yes, they were against it.
No.
I didn't know that.
Four.
They were for it. Remember, the North was mainly like factories and industry, so they wanted to protect they wanted to protect their manufacturing. Alright, so the next one, South. Were they for it, against it, or mixed? Go. That was Quentin.
Ooh.
They were against. They were mainly agriculture, and so they did not like the idea of tariffs. Alright, West. Were they for the tariffs, against the tariffs, or mixed? Go. It's Ethan barely.
Against.
You sure?
Yes.
Positive.
Yes.
Nope.
He said against it.
He said against.
They were mixed.
You should have
They
told
were
him.
mixed.
I
didn't
got a
tell him.
tissue.
You may.
Okay.
Alright,
They not.
the last issue was slavery, probably the easiest issue. Alright, was slavery. Was the North for slavery, against slavery, or mixed about it? Go!
Okay.
That
Chris is up, right?
110, 15% mixed.
Mad. Chris Quentin.
That was a
Alright, Alright,
Against.
they were against. Alright, the South for it, against it, or mixed. Go! Now you got it.
They were for it.
They were for it. Alright, so the West for it, against it, or mixed? Go! I think it was barely, but you were going to
That is so crazy.
It was four.
They were for it. So take a note of the sectional issues of the country. So that's how I've done this chart several days. Between us. All right, with the Missouri Compromise, Missouri came in as a state. What other state came in? Go. That was Chris.
That was Kentucky.
No.
Oh,
Maine.
Maine. Maine came in. Which one was the slave state? So which one came in as the slave? Because remember they want to keep that balance of power in the Senate. So which one was the slave state? You have a 50-50 shot. Just guessing. Is it Missouri or Maine? Go. That was highly questionable, but I'm gonna go.
That was the zoo.
You go with zoo?
Yes.
The
You go with
zoo.
zoo.
The zoo.
What?
The zoo.
What is your, so your answer is Mizzou.
Missouri.
Missouri, final answer?
Missouri.
It is Missouri. Alright, So, what year was the favorite son's election? You gotta know this year.
I know, I'm sorry.
Go. Quentin. Guess.
18.
Yep.
40, 24? 24?
You're going with 1824.
We said 18,624.
18, 1800?
We're going 1800. We're going 1800.
1832?
He's lynching off you.
Okay, you gotta go.
I'm guessing.
Alright, make your
1824.
1824, final answer.
Yes.
That's actually it. Good job. 1824 is the answer.
For what?
Alright, for
Wow.
the favorite
You're a
son's
clown.
election.
Wow.
This man changed his answer 8 times.
Alright, so remember, there were 3 sections of the country, so the West had 2 candidates. Who was the favorite son? Because remember, there weren't really parties in this time particular, in this particular time period. So what was the favorite son for the North? Go.
What was the last one start with?
A.
Quincy Adams?
What?
Oh, okay. I'll take it. John Quincy Adams, but yeah, we
Quincy
put
Adams.
Quincy's because there's 2 different John Adams. So John Quincy Adams. Alright, who was the favorite son of the South?
Sweet potato pie and a chip.
Go. Alright, Ethan.
What's mine, that's Charlie?
C.
What?
C. He obviously did not win, but well, who was the favorite son of the South?
Calhoun.
No, that's actually good.
That's what I was
He is
thinking
in
in
this
my
time
head.
period. Alright, anybody else know? Oh, sorry.
Isn't it Charles? Is it last name Charles? Isn't it I don't know.
Okay. Crawford. So William H. Crawford. I said
Is
Now,
students.
crawfish.
Yeah, the students last year memorized it because it sounds like crawfish. And
I
that's
pay
what-
attention.
Yeah. And so that's how they memorized it. So if
It's
that
not
helps you
crawfish.
remember, it's fine. So I just know that Genesis was paying attention to my video on the way home.
I heard that. I remember you hit less than that in the video.
Oh.
I do, I swear!
She was raised in
I
Louisiana,
swear.
She likes crawfish or Crawford himself.
Yeah,
Crawfish.
girl.
Alright, so there's 2 candidates for the West. Name both.
Whoa.
Both.
In the West.
No, yeah, for the West. Because remember, they had 2 favorite candidates. Go. Alright. One of them starts with C. One of them starts with AJ. I don't remember how to make J.
Last name was one with James. The other last name started with a C.
Mhm.
The last name started was
You could have talked about both these people in history already. Like they've done other things besides this point.
so yeah, James and Charles.
No.
Calhoun Jackson.
You're going with Calhoun and Jackson?
Yes.
Calhoun does start with C, but this is the wrong C. Alright, anyone want to try?
Calvary.
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 Someone's right?
Nope.
Calvary.
Nope. Alright,
Calvary.
you can get half a point. So Henry Clay and Andrew Jackson. So Henry Clay.
So I just put 1/2 or something?
Yeah, you put 0.5.
He's gonna
That
win.
means if.
Yeah, he's gonna win.
Alright, so who ended up winning the favorite son's election? So out of those 4 people, which is the only one that we know for the next one? Go.
Me.
John Quincy Adams.
John Quincy Adams?
Yes.
Yes, you are. Brandon, are you writing down terms?
No.
Okay, make sure you're writing down terms.
John
Alright,
Quincy
so
over there.
this is whenever Jackson's Jackson's followers accused John Quincy Adams and Henry Clay of having a corrupt bargain because Henry Clay convinced his supporters to vote for John Quincy Adams instead of voting for Andrew Jackson. So this is whenever you have the party split now into 2 parties again. So we have 2 parties now again. So what was the group that followed Jackson and his ideas more? Wait, gotta say go. I say go. It doesn't
You
count.
already said
No,
go.
I don't do
You
tricks like
said
that.
gotta say go.
I don't do tricks like that. You confuse me, people. Go.
Me.
You didn't get it.
Big
Okay.
Oh,
What's
Republican.
You're going for Republican for the group that followed Jackson?
Democrat.
You going with Jackson?
Republican.
You going Republican?
Yes.
No.
Okay.
Okay.
I didn't know that was next.
Not this time.
Dictatorship.
You're going with dictatorship?
Dictator.
Is that even a party?
Democrats, so Democratic Republicans.
The Whigs.
Or the no, not Whigs, definitely not Whigs.
I almost
So
said
Democratic Republicans,
No, I
and
wanted to
Democrats.
say.
National Republicans were the ones that followed Clay and John Quincy Adams. No, Andrew Jackson does start to rule like a dictatorship, but that's not his party name. Alright, so what was the tariff of abominations? What's the year for that? Because remember, we talked about the years for the tariffs. What was the tariff of abominations? The South hated it. Absolutely despised it. Go. I think Ethan really than Chris.
1836.
1836? Nope.
1837.
Nope. Anybody else want to guess?
1838.
Nope.
1839.
Nope.
1842.
Nope. 1828. Write it down. 1828. Tariff of abominations.
Eddie.
Okay, thinking back, this is not the most recent stuff, but thinking back over it, what was the first protective tariff? It was the tariff of what? Go. Chris.
Tariff, like, it's a state, right?
Nope.
Where's it start with?
It's a year?
Here.
the
Oh,
tariff of-
tariff of 1807.
I don't know what you're thinking of, but it's not that one. Okay. Ethan was
Tariff
next.
of 1814.
That's close, but not it.
Tariff of 1812.
No. Anyone else want to guess?
It's the war of 1812.
I got it.
1813.
1817.
Nope. Alright, 1816.
Oh.
1816 was the first protective tariff. Alright, who wrote the South Carolina Exposition and Protest saying that this tariff was unconstitutional, the tariff of 1828? It is long. People did write long titles in this
That's
time.
why.
They just liked them. You have to fix that in a minute. Go. Great. His last name begins with a C. But you have a lot of C people in this time period.
Calhoun.
Calhoun, final answer?
Yes.
Yes, it is. Johnson Calhoun.
South
What is
Carolina,
he
Blue House.
Exposition and protests. Alright,
One
what
of
did
the
we
guys.
call Jackson's unofficial group of advisors? So he had his official cabinet that we're not supposed to question his authority. Then he had his unofficial cabinet that was basically his actual helpful group. So what do we call, what was the nickname for his actual group? Go.
Hey,
There was no.
kitchen cabinet.
That's the kitchen cabinet.
I know a lot about kitchens.
Alright, so we talked about how we had the great debate in Congress, how we were starting to see the idea of state rights versus the idea of the federal government. So who gets to tell who what to do? Who said state rights? Who was that orator or that speaker for Congress? Go.
What's from
His last name begins with an H.
an H?
That's not H.
It's weird too, isn't it?
Sorta. We have not seen this last name at
Isn't it
all.
like, is it Howard?
Not Howard. Alright, what else want to guess? Alright, Robert Hayne. Robert Hayne.
Like the
So, principal of state rights. Hayne. Hayne.
Oh, why?
Alright, who defended the Union? He's also remembered as he gave the greatest orientation or speech heard in Congress in the 19th century. That's the 1800s. Go. That was Ethan.
Daniel Webster.
That's Daniel Webster. Okay, who was Jackson's first vice president? Jackson's gonna have two vice presidents, so what's the first vice president? Go.
What's last name start with?
See?
See, is it, he just said it. Isn't it like, he was the guy from the West, right?
I believe he was a frontiersman. I'm not sure by what you mean by West, though.
Charles. Yeah.
Okay, Ethan.
Calhoun.
Calhoun! Now, was Jackson for the Union or was he for states' rights? You 50-50 shot of guessing this one. Go! He was barely punching.
Union.
He was for the Union. Now remember, John C. Calhoun was for states' rights. This is the first time we see open breaks between them, and Calhoun eventually quits because of this. Alright,
He
talking
just
about
walks
the...
out of America and he's just like, I quit.
Now, he quits being vice president and he becomes a senator for South Carolina because he wanted more for state rights. And remember, South Carolina was doing some not shady business, but discovering of, can we nullify Congress? Can we?
Let me
Can
guess,
we?
he's never
Can
heard
we?
from again in history.
Oh, yeah, he is actually. He just keeps coming. He's a senator. Alright, so what was the treaty that the Cherokee signed saying that they would leave their territory in Florida and go over? So we talked about this, I believe, on Friday. So this one's a little bit harder. So it's a treaty of what? Go. You sure?
Is it a year?
Nope.
What does it start with?
It's E. It's an Indian word.
The Treaty of, Iroquois?
That's what I'm gonna
Yes, I
add.
know. Okay.
Ituana or Itwina or something.
Say it again.
I don't know.
Okay. Why did you want to guess? Alright. Say it one more time. You might have been closest, Ethan.
Ituana
Echota, I think is what you're going for, the Treaty of New Echota. So just make a note for that. It's on page 148 if you want to see how they spell it, because they do spell it a little bit funky, which is their word. Alright, what did the Cherokee journey become known as? Because it was so harsh for them and so many of them died.
Should've been
And
known.
again, it was sad part in history, that's why we learn it. Don't ever do listen to this again. What was it?
I should have been there with him.
Are you part Cherokee?
I don't know.
I
I
am.
am.
I know I am.
I'm like 15% Cherokee.
I forget how much I am. I think I'm like 164, so it's like my great grandmother.
I think my family and I can bond it.
Well, if you've been in America, if your family has been in America for a while, you're probably part Indian in some ways
Yeah.
because there's been so much mixing. So if your great grandparents have been in America, you probably have some Indian blood in you at this point. Alright, so what was that journey called? What was that trail called? Go.
Trail of Tears.
Trail of Tears, to make a note for that. Trail of Tears. Alright, so what was the state that decided we're gonna try to nullify an act of Congress and succeed, pull out of the Union, but nobody else follows them, so they changed their mind and they decided they're gonna come back. So what was that state that was the first one to kind of semi-try it, but they were disappointed that nobody else decided to go with them at this point? Good. It was even better.
South Carolina.
South Carolina, that's the senator, so John C. Calhoun is the senator of South Carolina. Pull it out, Mo. Alright, so what was the bill that gave the president to authority to use the Army and Navy to enforce revenue laws if needed? But it was basically saying, okay, if you have a state try this again, the president has the authority to enforce it, but South Carolina comes in and nullifies that law, so there goes that. But they're just seeing, okay, what can we get away with? So what was that bill? Go.
What's her?
F. To enforce the revenue laws.
To enforce the revenue laws?
Mhm.
Force Act.
It's a bill.
Force bill.
There you go, force bill.
Right.
I think that's where, I think this is the last thing we left off. Alright, so who had 5 points or more? Alright, make sure you're being honest, gentlemen. So 8 points or more? 12 points or more?
Wait, hold on.
I have 12.
You have 12?
That's not enough.
Alright, 12 points, don't forget your candy. Alright, go ahead and take out your text
I only
right
had
over
12.
the page, 149. So that's the last thing we talked about with President Jackson and the Bank of the United States. Now, thinking back over it, did most Westerners like the Bank of the United States?
No.
No, they did not. So, where's President Jackson from, Clinton?
Wait,
The West. So, you think President Jackson liked the bank?
no.
No, he did not. So he decided that he's going to basically try to get rid of the Bank of the United States. Now, he can't actually just fire the entire Bank of the United States. He said so he's gonna get around it to try to defeat it in a slightly different way. Yes.
That is my review.
State water, are you sure? Okay, fine. Alright, so it was beneficial for the country as a whole, but Jackson didn't really like the national bank, and so he decided that we're gonna try. Now he said he said in his period that the bank would have its charter or have its. Yeah, I'm gonna fix it in a minute because I keep noticing on my screen. I'm waiting for that screen to load first, and then I'm gonna fix it.
Tilted.
Yeah, I know. It must have gotten bumped somehow. So I'm staring at the ceiling.
Are you sure?
So if you.
Or sitting in that.
No, I'm gonna go ahead and I was gonna ask Quentin to fix it, but if it breaks, then I don't want you to get in trouble, Quentin, so. Yeah.
Quentin loves getting.
Sorry, Jamie, that probably freaked out your computer screen really bad. Yeah, I noticed it, since we're just doing, wow. Okay, I gotta fix it, it's going on the screen, it's really bad.
Yeah, I broke it.
No, I think
I
you
don't
just,
know if I broke it.
no,
Oh. You gotta break it in the window.
7.
no. Okay, we'll see if that's better.
Yeah, you can bring your iPad with you, right?
Okay. Yay, no, it is straight and it's not staring at the ceiling. Sorry, Jamie. During the review, I didn't mind if you stared at the ceiling, but now that we're in actual class, now I hear. Alright, so, now keep in mind that the bank already had its charter. Now remember, when was the second Bank of the United States, when did it get its charters? What was the year for that? That was the 2 events you need to know for this year. With the tariff, the first protective tariff, and then you had the Bank of the United States, the second bank technically, when this first charter expired. So what was the year for that? Alright, well if you had the first protective tariff in 1860, and if the bank got its charter in the same year as the tariff of 1860, all those ideas for. Now, the chartering issue is technically not supposed to expire for a couple more years, but Henry Clay and several other influential national Republicans said, I bet we can make Andrew Jackson look bad if we go ahead and we ask to recharter or to renew the charter of the second bank of the United States. If we ask for a renewal for it now, Jackson will take an advantage to try to get rid of it. So we can make him look bad. So they convinced Nicholas Biddle, make a note for his name, he was the president of the National Bank. They said, hey, go ahead and ask for this charter again. Go ahead and ask to go ahead and renew it. And so because of that, we can use this against Jackson. So make a note, president of the National Bank, Nicholas Biddle, that he said, oh, okay, I'll go ahead and I'll re-ask for it. Next page. This plan backfired though, because Jackson ended up winning anyway, even though this was supposed to make Jackson look bad because they knew Jackson would attack the bank, that it ended up not hurting Jackson. Jackson still ended up winning, and he beat Henry Clay by a large margin. Now keep in mind, his second VP was Martin Van Buren, so make a note that that was his second vice president. So President Jackson, he said, okay, since people still voted for me, even though I don't like the bank, that must mean people don't like the bank either. So I'm going to go ahead and try to get rid of the National Bank. So he said, okay, this must take it as people, they don't like it either. Rather than just getting rid of it, he just removed all government funds from it. So he removed all government funds from the bank. He appointed Roger B. Taney, or Tony, I'm technically supposed to say it, as Secretary of the Treasury. So make a note of that. So Roger B. Taney is how his name looks. Just be careful. Yes.
A quick question.
Okay.
Does the vice president live in the White House?
I do not believe so. I mean, I don't know for sure because I've never actually looked that up, but I would guess, educated guess, no, because it's the president specifically. I don't believe you get really anything that special. Now, today the vice president is more important, but back in this time period, you were just there as kind of like the backup plan in case the president dies. If no president
Then you
had
get the White
died
House.
yet, yeah, then you can move it to the White House. But there was no president that had died yet by this point. Now the first president to die is coming, but it was one of those where okay, you were there as like a backup plan. You were plan D in an emergency situation, basically.
Oh, okay, plan B.
Okay.
What?
So does that mean that the vice president just lives in their own house, wherever?
Like I said, I did not look this up. I'm assuming that they live maybe somewhere a little bit safer because you can't have the president and the vice president get assassinated at the same time.
Then what happens if that happens?
They actually have it planned out now, saying, okay, if the president dies, if the vice president dies,
Speaker
then
of
the
the
next guy is Speaker of the House. Good job. And then it goes on through like the cabinet officials. Because there's one time period whenever all those people are all together, whenever the president gives his inaugural address, that's whenever the cabinet's together, Congress is together, the vice president and the president or the vice president are all together. They on purpose take the guy that's like number like 18th in the line. They on purpose keep him somewhere else entirely different, so in case you have a really bad event and like the whole building blows up.
Yeah, what if everyone dies?
Congratulations! This guy, number 18 in the line, is way over here on purpose. Congratulations, you are now president. But at that point, if the president and vice president and entire Congress just died, you're gonna have some
You are
major
in
issues.
trouble.
You're gonna be basically a dictator, an emergency dictator, until we elect all of our senators and House representatives all over again. And then we're gonna be going to war. It's gonna be bad. Alright, really quick.
Contrary to popular belief, the president and the vice president don't ever actually fly
Is
together.
this a question? Is this a question?
Yes, it is.
What's your question? What's your question?
It's never happened when it's gone down to the House of Representatives, or not, to the Speaker of the House, right?
We do have some guy that he's appointed vice president, and then he ends up becoming president, even though no one ever actually voted for him to be vice president or president. We'll talk about him later on. So that's kind of like the weirdest.
Not directly.
No, it's never been president, vice president, wow, Speaker of the House. It's never gone that bad in that straight line. Now again, we had, I think it was the president died, and so the vice president became president, and so the vice president chose a new vice president, and then I think the vice president, he left, like he resigned, I believe it's Nixon and Ford, and so he becomes the next president even though no one had actually voted for him to be president or vice president. So it's one of those kind of weird circumstances in American history. Alright.
The Senator of the House right now, or Speaker of the House, is Nancy Pelosi, right?
Yeah.
Oh goodness.
She's a old trumpet.
It's okay. November's
She's like
coming.
80 something.
November 3rd. So November 3rd is the next election date. So That's what we hear people talk about more.
Can we find out who's president on November 3rd? That's
Yes.
just.
You will find out, remember, do we vote for president or do we vote for electors? You vote for electors. So they can calculate though the number of electors, say, okay, who got the most votes in this state for the party, so that determines your electoral votes. So then, okay, they can count up saying, okay, if you got this state, this state, this state, this state, this state, whoever gets 270 electoral votes, that's the winner. So even though you know by the next day, by the time they count Alaska and Hawaii, like everybody, that's where they know. Typically, for us, I think it's around 1 or 2 in the morning. I go to bed because the president is going to be whoever the president's going to be. I'll just Google it in the morning when I wake up. But sometimes people will stay up
That's the end
because
of
they
the
want to know. I just
You don't stay up.
pray and I go to bed because it's whoever it is in the morning when
It's
I
like the
wake up.
NBA
At that point.
finals.
What?
It's like the NBA finals, you just go to sleep and then when you
Yeah,
wake
just
up.
wake up in the morning.
Unless you're,
Oh,
unless
okay.
you're-
I wouldn't
Okay,
say
wait,
you're
wait,
the
raise your hand
whole
because I
game
can't
too
focus on
much.
everybody. Raise your hand. Okay.
The last time Georgia was a blue state was Bill Clinton, right?
I did not look up the history of the states, I'm sorry. I do not know because I've moved around so much. I know like loose history for it, but I can't tell you when was the last time for a particular state being a particular color. Now, I don't think Georgia's been a swing state in a while. Florida
It is this
was,
year.
it is this year?
It's
I actually
a
have not
big
looked
swing
at it.
state this year.
So,
There's a swing state?
Georgia, I know Florida
What's
was.
a swing state?
A swing state is one to where they're not sure which direction it's gonna vote, like will it vote Republican or Democrat? And so because of that, they're not sure, because it's swinging from one direction to the other. That's how come you might notice that there's a lot more like billboards.
John
supporting
Ossoff.
one. Alright, got you going now. Alright, so make a note though that this provided financial instability since President Jackson decided, okay, I don't like I don't like the Bank of the United States, so we're gonna pull out government funds from it. So it destabilized the national bank. Now, the states, they started doing their own banks for it, but since the bank can no longer enforce currency, you're basically having speculation or the wildcat bank starting up again with the idea of just giving away money just to give away money, sorry. And so they started mispronounced, I'm sorry, circulation of the bank notes. So, this is what we started having the bank notes that tripled, or inflation, so just make a note for that as well. So, this is the first time though in history whenever you had the national debt, is they were able to pay off the entire national debt, and they still had a surplus or extra or 20 million. But keep in mind, if you have inflation, does the money, is it worth as much as what it
Yes.
normally is? No, it's not. So it's the idea of the money has gone down. So even though they have 20 million extra dollars, it's not worth as much as what it should be. So that's probably the reason why it was, oh, we have extra money. Do you, or do you just have paper money that says it's worth as much?
So look at that dazzling looking fellow over there.
We'll talk about him. This is a cartoon. This is a cartoon that was drawn of President Andrew Jackson, because we're going to talk about this
They
as well.
dress like
He was-
that?
Why does it look like
No,
King
they drew,
Charles?
we're gonna talk about that. That's the reason why,
I
is
was about
people,
to say.
they either really liked President Jackson and they loved him, they thought that he was
I don't know what that's
fantastic.
for.
And other people, they hated King Andrew, as they nicknamed him, because they
Yeah.
said he ruled like a monarch. This is a cartoon, a political cartoon that they drew of him, just basically making fun of him, saying that he's like stomping on the Constitution, he's using the power of the veto like a scepter.
What's
So
that
he's
thing?
raise your hand. Raise your hand. Yes.
I wonder what I think of his hand said.
Yeah, so veto, so they're saying that he's using it like the kings of England, that he's basically being an authoritarian president. Ironically, Jackson thought that he was just being a good president, but he ran like a military organization. He said, no, it's my way or the highway. I'm the president. This is what I say to do. And so that's basically what he did. Now, people this time period, they either really loved him and they thought that he was a great president, or they hated him. Kind of like our president today. You either really like him typically, or you really don't like him. There's not a lot of, well, I think the president's okay. No, it's one of those things where a lot of people were worried about whenever our current president was first elected. People were talking about how, oh, our country has never been this divided over a president. Yes, we have. We have very clearly been divided over presidents. Not to mention with Abraham Lincoln, that was a very big division whenever Abraham Lincoln became president. Our country literally split just because they were so freaked out over it. And so again, we've had presidents that have been unpopular with half the country before. It's nothing new, it's just more recent. That's probably the reason why people are more focused on it today. But yeah, we've definitely had presidents before where the country was divided or had very strong feelings about him previously. Okay.
Wasn't Jackson a general then?
He was a military general. Do you remember what war what
Mexican?
battle?
Or what battle?
What battle?
I thought it was a Mexican one.
Oh, well, he went into the Spanish Florida, remember? And he went through and he got the smugglers and the pirates and he hung them whenever he wasn't supposed to. And he almost caused, I talked about this. And then the British, and so it almost caused conflict with Great Britain. And then Spain protested, and we told Spain to suck it up, basically. And send over troops or deal with it. Spain, sorry.
Respect their ankles.
No. Alright, so, but yeah, so keep in mind, do you remember what battle he's known for though? It was right at the end of the War of 1812. Technically the war was already over.
War of 1813.
War at New Orleans.
Good job, Battle of New Orleans. So that's the battle we're known for. Alright, so you also had the species circular, so make a note of that on page 150. So Jackson, he said, okay, there's a problem of inflation in this area. So he said, okay, we're gonna start decreasing using paper money. You can only use gold or silver to buy land now. Now Jackson realized, okay, we're having problems with inflation, so speedy circular. You can only purchase land with gold and silver. So if you've been purchasing land with paper money, and now people can only buy your land with gold or silver, are the people gonna have enough gold or silver to be able to go buy your land? No, they don't. So this caused a problem. Now, President Jackson leaves the presidency by this point, by the time you have the actual economic depression hit, so poor Martin Van Buren is left to deal with that. But this is where President Jackson started with the idea of the species circular. Species has to do with buying something based on its value, so that's where the idea of species circular comes from. So Jackson had already left the presidency. He decided he only wanted to serve 2 terms as well. So by the end of his 2nd term, he decided, nope, I'm done. And poor Martin Van Buren was plain and stuck with it. Alright, so foreign policy. So, points out one of the most important accomplishments is opening American trade with the British West Indies, because we're still working out and negotiating with Great Britain. Still, Great Britain is getting along with us better at this point, but still, there's a little bit of tension for it. Now, Jackson also attempted to collect various American claims for damages done to the United States merchants during the Napoleonic Wars. He actually made some very, very bold statements against them, and so much that the French demand an apology because they're offended by President Jackson. And we almost end up going to war with them over it, but then President Jackson's cabinet convinces him to calm down, and the French calm down. So there was no official war, but again,
Which cabinet?
which one? I think it was, I think it might have been his unofficial cabinet helped him out for it, saying that he shouldn't do that. But it was almost about to go to war, but they didn't. So keep in mind though, again, we associate our current president with maybe lashing out on Twitter and other places about using his words that he may not be supposed to. He needs to think through a little bit more. But again, we've had presidents previously to where they've said some rash things or said some things and offended other people as well. So again, it's not the only time period is our current time period whenever we see this like this. We see this in other people in history as well. Alright, so the rise, so you have the rise of the Whig Party. The Whig Party came up specifically saying, we don't like Andrew Jackson. We don't know what we stand for, but we don't like Andrew Jackson specifically. So this is where their name comes from. The Whig Party, this was the name for a group in history, in the English history, that they had originally opposed the monarchy. So that's come, they took the name the Whig Party on purpose in this era because they're against King Andrew. That's where that idea comes from, is they claim that he was acting like a king, he's acting like a monarch, and we don't like him. So they took the title of the Whig Party, saying that they are against the monarchy, with the idea of we are just against King Andrew. Now, they did not know what they stood for. They just knew we just don't like him. So we're against him, but we don't have any other official platform. That's going to get them in trouble later on. Alright, the election of 1836. To make a note, this is whenever Martin Van Buren becomes president. So, make a note, Martin Van Buren. Now, Andrew Jackson said, okay, 2 terms are up, I'm done, I want to go ahead and stop. Now, keep in mind, did Andrew Jackson have to stop being president? No, because remember that amendment was not in place yet. So he could have said, I want to get going. But a lot of cases, presidents said, okay, since George Washington was only president for 2 terms, and being president is exhausting, that they decided, okay, after 2 terms, 8 years, I think I'm over and I think I'm done with it. So he said, I want Martin Van Buren to be my successor, like a monarchy. He said, I want this person to be president, vote for him, I'm going home, I'm retiring. So Martin Van Buren, he ended up winning though, because people did support Andrew Jackson. Now again, the Whigs did not like him, but they weren't organized enough to come up with something plausible to vote for. They just said, we're against Andrew Jackson. What do you stand for? I don't know, whatever Andrew Jackson stood for, we're against that. And so they didn't have a good platform. Alright, unfortunately, Martin Van Buren, he got stuck with a lot of the problems that President Jackson started. So, you had the Panic of 1837. This is the second economic depression. Now remember, what was the first economic depression? We've already talked about this. So, what year was the first economic depression? Not 1807. 1819. Good job. So this one is the 1837. So make a note for this date. So 1837. So we remember this as the Panic of 1837. That's whenever the Depression officially hits. Now poor Martin Van Buren was blamed for it. It wasn't his fault. Yeah, somebody's finding
Is that
photos.
Photoshop?
It's a little bit hard.
Cookie Monster.
Yeah. Okay. Be sure to be nice to him. But it's one of those to where there is kind of hard.
Boogie.
If you start googling up photos of the previous presidents, you get some very bad looking
Photoshop.
photos. I tried to find the best one as I could that looked good. Now, your book, you can tell he has some crazy hair, but again, trying to
Why?
show, okay, here's some good photos I could try to find for him. Alright, so we made up the Panic of 37. So the unsound practices of private banks and Jackson's piece of circular crop shortage, so other things contributed to the Depression. So even though it wasn't his fault, he still got stuck with trying to fix it. And in a lot of cases, if you are the president during an economic depression, you get blamed for it, so it's your fault for being president. And so that is just an unfortunate side effect for this. Is you get blamed for a lot of things, even though it's technically not your fault. Alright, so Martin Van Buren, he said, okay, to replace the Bank of the United States, we're going to use a different system. So make a note that Martin Van Buren, he urged Congress to establish an independent treasury system. It's kind of like the banks, but it's not. So, make a note of what it is. This whenever you have funds held by the federal government, they're going to be stored at the Treasury at Washington, the vaults in the U.S. Mint, or sub-treasuries to be built in major cities. The major cities were New York, Boston, Philadelphia, New Orleans, St. Louis, and Charleston. So it's kind of like a bank, but the bank is more spread out, was the idea behind it. So it's the independent treasury system. So make a note for that. Alright, you're over for tonight.
What?
Yep. Alright, I'll catch up. Don't
What
worry
is
about
that?
it. Read pages 156. Alright, 156. Technically 157. 157 to page 159. 157 to 159. Answer on page 159. Questions 1 through 4. When is the president's quiz? Wednesday. Study of presidents.
Tuesday.
So,
Tuesday.
1 through 25.
Study Wednesday
What?
morning.
That is everything. So, read pages 157 to 159. End of page 159, questions 1 through 4. Don't forget President's Wednesday.
I'm the best quiz.